I hope you're able to see my screen. So now let me ask you this question. Before we go into data engineering, so this one is around what is data and data engineering, right? So what we'll be going through this is we've been through the course introduction, and we're talking about what is the data engineering, what are the roles, different kinds of roles, and all the stuff within the data. Do you use data in a day-to-day basis or not? So to keep it simple, you're taking a picture in your phone, it's a data. Okay. So sometimes when we see data, we think about something like, okay, it is sitting somewhere in a format or only the companies process it, things like that, right? But in reality, a data is basically you're storing a phone number. Your phone number is a data, right? Your home address is a data. Your GPS location is a data. You taking a picture in your phone is a data. You taking a video is a phone, is data. So, olden days, like maybe if you go back like 10, 15 years ago and all, or maybe roughly 10 years ago, people had this more of data is what the companies have about the customers or companies have about it. But if it was always there, but it's more of like the understanding of the people and the awareness about the data, right? So, but when you actually realize we are heavily involved in data in nowadays because of our phones, because of everything. Like you're making a payment in your, Google Pay or UPI, whatever you're using. So you're making a payment from your phone to somebody else. So you're basically sending data. So your payment, the process, whoever is sending the sender information is data, the receiver information is data, and the transaction amount is a data. Okay, so let's understand as a data engineers, we all deal with data, and let's not think like data is something. It is of course raw. It can be raw. It can be processed. Anything. Okay, but data can be in any format, not necessarily in the text. So many times we get confused when we say data as oh, it's a text information. No, data can be a video, data can be an image, data can be, uh, you know, a QR code, something. Everything is data. So, okay, so let's just let that sink in. So what is the data engineering, right? And also I want to, in the very beginning, I want to clarify what is a data engineer, what are the different roles that people play when dealing with the data. Okay, so in a enterprise environment, when you have the data, we'll talk more about the data and types of data in few minutes time. But before we do it, I want to talk about the people that deal with the data, right? So there are different people perform different operations on the data that we receive. Because it's a data engineering, so you might be wondering, okay, what is the difference between a data engineer and a data scientist? And you must have also heard about somebody talking about a data analyst. So you might be like, okay, I heard somebody saying data analyst, somebody saying data engineer, someone saying data scientist. What is all the difference in it? So the key difference is data engineer is someone that basically takes the data in its raw format, right? Who collects the data. To going by the definition, he basically builds and scales the platforms. Okay, he's basically someone who is building the platform that allows the data collection, data processing, data storage for business usage purpose. Okay, so remember, data engineer's role is data. Do data engineers create the presentations for the business? Not in a real world scenario. So they may be sometimes they might be creating it, but data engineers mostly deal with the platforms. They deal with the data. They collect data, process, and store it. And when they store the data, then the remaining players come into the picture. Okay, so what is a data scientist? A data scientist is someone who basically uses the data that is created by the data engineer. So does it mean you need to have a data engineer for every data scientist? Not necessarily, but what data engineer does, a data engineer basically takes the data in a raw format as it is arriving, and he performs some operations on it. For example, uh, you know, something like there is a transaction happened. Okay, when a transaction happened, okay, think of it this way. So there was a someone sent something to the in a Google Pay, right? So a transaction of an inbound transaction or outbound transaction that happened on it. You only have the actual transaction has only the information about, okay, this is 5,000 rupees or a $500, whatever. So that is basically a transaction. But somebody wants to know, okay, who is the sender, who is the receiver, though it has it, but how much money has been transferred within using Google Pay in 1 month time, in 1 week time, or what is the potential so of transferring more, who is using it more, and what is the age group that is using it more. So if you take that as an example, like someone sending a transferring data, let's take two examples. What example one is, someone is sending the data, someone is sending money from using Google Pay from one account to another account. This is one scenario. The other scenario is someone is logging into Netflix or Amazon Prime or some other platform, or including YouTube, and watching some videos there. So these are two different sets of transactions that are happening. Then what roles do these people play in those kind of scenarios? So in the first scenario where somebody is sending money, person A is sending money to person B in Google Pay. What is the role of a data engineer? The role of the data engineer there is about collecting the data from all these individual transactions and storing the data in a meaningful way, right? When I say meaningful way, in the sense storing the data in a raw format, okay? And also he will be performing certain operations on it, on to make sure, because somebody might be doing it in the India time, somebody might be doing it in a UK time or some other time. So they will be like creating some common, forming the data and creating a certain, commonalities with the data. And sometimes you need to join the transactions on the people as well, right? So let's say like who made this transaction, or you go to a cash machine and you withdraw it. So who made the transaction, where does he live? So there are things called facts and dimensions. So don't worry about all the technicalities. We'll come to be talking about them shortly. But the main thing is understand at a high level. A data engineer is someone who takes the data, who collects all the data, who processes all the data, and who stores the data for further use. That is the main role of a data engineer. Then what, in taking the first example, when there are like, let's say we have like a 50,000 transaction that happened in 1 hour on Google Pay. This data engineer's job is to collect all the transactions, put them in one place. Then if you have to do something extra on the transactions, like, adding some additional information, there is a currency conversion and those kind of things, he will be performing and he will be storing the data. So that is all the data engineer does in the first example. In the second example, when somebody is watching videos on Netflix or a YouTube, what does a data engineer do? He takes all the people's details, whoever is watching the movies or videos, whatever, and he'll also collect what time they're watching, what content they're watching, and what is their details, like, all the details. He'll be like the transaction detail, like 7 o'clock, somebody is watching a movie on Netflix. 7 or 7:15, this person is watching this YouTube video. This kind of a raw data, he will be taking, a data engineer will be taking, will be collecting, and will be storing in a easily accessible storage. Don't worry much. We'll talk about all those details, technicalities, where does he store, how does he collect, and all of it. But at a high level, keep it that way. Then what is the data scientist's role? What does a data scientist do? A data scientist, okay, let me switch slightly before I come to the data scientist. We'll talk about the data analyst. Then we'll talk about the data scientist. I think then it makes more sense for you. So taking a step back, data engineer's job is to collect all the data in a raw format, store the data in a easily accessible, it could be a file system, it could be a database, anywhere, store the data in a easily accessible storage location and make all the transformation and keep it ready for somebody to consume. Then a data analyst comes into the picture. So what is the job of the data analyst? A data analyst will try to make more insights from the data, from the raw data or the processed data. In example one, let's say we have 50,000 transactions on Google Pay in the last 1 hour. Data engineer processed, now the data is already in the system, in the platform. What does a data analyst do? Data analyst will go and he will make some dashboards or present the data to the business users in a more meaningful way. For example, he will be like, from Hyderabad, we have 20,000 people made a transaction of 1.5 lakhs. From Chandigarh, we had 5,000 people made a transaction of something. So he'll be like kind of a building that kind of a business insight from the data, and he will be presenting it to the business so they know, okay, if we give an offer here, maybe they'll be able to send more money. Or these people are using, like the people, let's say in Delhi, are using more Google Pay than the people in Punjab. Or, I don't know the city name in Punjab, but let's say take anything, right? Or Ahmedabad, whatever. So basically, they kind of make some decisions based on how the data is coming. So what the data analyst is doing, the data analyst is helping making some insights from the data and helping the businesses to make decisions. Then they know, okay, these people are doing this, these people are watching it, these people are not watching it, using our platforms, whatever it is. So similarly, in the second example, if it is about some OTT platform or some platform, and it is about this, what the data engineer does, he brings all the data, and data analyst will take all the data and see people are watching these movies, or people are watching, like for example, this is a summer season, let's say in UK, US and all. If it is summer now, so they'll be like, okay, in summer people are watching more DIY videos, so they are watching more DIY videos, people are watching more of a house decoration videos. Then what happens, so these guys will know that, okay, this is the thing, so now we have to push more of it. So they basically understand what is happening. So the data analyst only gives more insights about the existing one. Now, what is the role of a data scientist? Data scientist role is more complex than the other ones, because the role is such a vast role that you can use it for different purposes as well. For example, a data scientist, take the first example. In the first example, we're sending money. The data scientist, what he does, he will be mainly doing all the forecasting and all the predictions. How will it be like if this trend continues? So what analyst is doing is he's telling how many people are sending, from which area, what is the amount. But what data scientist will do, he will use all these data that is available in the platform created by the data engineer. He will be running some models. It could be some mathematical models and recommendation engines. So there are a lot of other complex things in it. maybe in the left, if required, we'll also touch base on them briefly so that you know them better. But at a high level, what the data scientist will do, data scientist will take all that information and will try to forecast. So there is something called a predictive analytics. So he will predict how many people, like this month, in the coming month, how many people are going to do the transaction based on the trends, how many people are going to watch more videos, how many people are going to watch this video. So when you go to YouTube, you see all those recommendations. Like sometimes you, in your home page, you get the recommendations. You might be wondering why, how are they getting it? So basically what is happening is the data engineer is getting all your details and building some data pipeline. So as soon as you click on something, from that click, there is a streaming that is happening. Like, okay, so and so person has watched it, has clicked it. After watching that video, he clicked the second video. So all that information is being captured by the data engineers and stored into a data platform. And data scientist is running the models on top of that data to see what will this guy like more, what is the commonality between us. So let's say sometimes they rate the videos based on, like, there are two different users from a same age group. He might say, like, okay, this guy who just passed out college and who wants to learn something on a data engineering, watch this video. Then if there is other person with a similar background, so it is called a classification. So they do all the classifications, they classify the people, put them into different categories, and they'll be like, okay, if this guy is doing more, then he might also like. So if they both are similar classification, if the person A likes something, person B also might like something, might like the same thing. So those kind of predictions and stuff is done by the data scientist. It's much bigger, complex role, but at a high level. So just taking a step back, if you have the data coming in from different systems or raw data, a data engineer collects all the data, processes and stores, so that the data analyst, businesses or data analyst or data scientists can use it. And these are the differences. So any questions on that? So do you understand the role? So when somebody is asking, or do you generate a recommendations, do you create dashboards, you could if you want, but generally that is not part of the data engineer. When somebody is asking, okay, do you create recommendation engines, do you create the data models or machine learning models, then you should tell them, like, that is not part of the data engineer role, it's part of the data scientist role. You may do it on a personal level as part of your interest, but it is not expected out of a data engineer's role. Data engineer's role is all about how to capture the data, how to store the data, and how to make the data accessible to the target audience. So the role of the data engineering is all about designing, building, scaling systems. Okay, so basically what is the role of a data engineer? Or a data engineer involves designing, building, maintaining the infrastructure and systems that enable the collection, storage, and processing of large volumes of data. Like, as I said, we process like terabytes of data every hour. So it's all about, like, how much data can you process, uh, so working with the large volumes of data. Data engineers work on data pipelines, databases, ETL process to ensure data is accessible, accurate, and ready for analysis by data scientists and analysts. Okay, so these are the key roles and responsibilities of the data engineer. The first one is design and build data infrastructure. Okay, so when we say infrastructure, it's nothing but a platform. Your laptops, for example, have the memory, and your laptops have the storage, hard drives and memory. So when you build your data platforms, your data platform should be able to take data as they come. You don't want, like, you have like a 1 terabyte, and then you have more data and you have no place to store. So as a data engineer, you need to make sure you always have enough way to scale the data. So don't worry about scaling. So scaling is another concept. We'll come to that in our for future sessions. So your data needs to be scalable. So building that scalable data sets, scalable infrastructure and platforms is very important. Okay, and this part as a data collection and integration. So creating and managing a ingestion process. So we'll see some diagrams on the ingestion, how the ingestion process happens. Okay, and building the data pipeline development, like as we discussed earlier. So when we build the data pipelines here, so when data engineers build the data pipelines, you are like end to end. How do you make sure your data is accurate? How do you make sure your data meets a quality and it's not messed up? How do you make sure you received the data in the way it processed? For example, you're processing retail data, like take some big bazaar or whatever, or anything for that matter. Take a retail example or Amazon. So in Amazon, if you are processing that, there is one transaction that happened, like where a sale has happened and a refund has happened. Like somebody purchased at 10 o'clock and 10:05 they came and said, oh, we don't like it, we want to go for a refund. And the refund is processed and the customer has been refunded. So in the data pipeline, you need to make sure your data arrives, like your pipeline has a way to take the data as it arrives and not in a chronological order and in the order that the data is arriving. Basically, you're processing in the asynchronous order, and so that you have all the transactions in the way that is happening. Otherwise, what could happen, you received a transaction, like a cancel order and a refund order request, but you have not actually received the main request, like which is the sale request. Then what happens in your data, it will be showing in your accounts, it will be showing a negative balance. So it is very important that you first process what has happened first and then the refund process. So that is all the responsibility of the data engineer. So data engineer needs to make sure we are processing the data as we receive. Okay, and the next one is data performance optimization. Like as I said, it's all about balancing between the cost and the performance. So when somebody is trying to retrieve the data, governance and security. So this is also a very important point. When it comes to the data governance and security, what does this mean is there are some regulations that as a data engineers you need to be aware of. If a company is found that their data is accessible by other people or unauthorized people, they can be fined heavily. They'll be losing millions and billions if their customer data is leaked. So as a data engineers, you should always make sure the right people have the right access to it, not everyone in the organization. So having the data governance in place and the security in place is a very important thing. Okay, so obviously you need to collaborate and you need to communicate, as you will be working with different people, so you will be collaborating and communicating.